Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is where I talk about things that interest me, particularly watches, bags, everyday carry type of items that enhance my day-to-day activities and my experience just going through life. Really, this is just a place for me to ramble to the camera because my wife has zero interest in hearing about this stuff. But today I want to talk about this watch, the Tudor Black Bay GMT Pepsi. This watch is not new to the Tudor lineup. It dates back to 2018. More recently, they released a white or opaline version of the dial with the same blue and burgundy bezel. And just last week at Watches and Wonders, they just announced the Black Bay GMT 58, which is a more vintage take on the GMT. It's not really my cup of tea. I much prefer the Black Bay GMT, which is slightly larger at 41 millimeters. I picked this watch up towards the end of 2022 before the white dial was released. I was looking to add another watch to my collection, something slightly dressier. It's still in that dive watch category, being a Black Bay, but with the shinier case and the way it came on this beautiful leather strap from the AD, it had a much dressier look to it than my Submariner and my Tudor Pelagos at the time. It doesn't nearly get the wear time of some of my other watches, and it's mainly due to the leather band. While it's super comfortable, very adjustable, Tudor has done a great job on the clasp, on the overall quality and appearance of it. I don't dare get it wet. So this watch is kind of reserved for a little bit more tame evenings when I know what I'm getting into. My day-to-day work life has a lot of variability to it, and I'm very appreciative of that. But that means that I don't know if I'm going to be getting wet or into something kind of dirty, and I don't really want to mess up the leather band. So I think a simple fix to that is maybe putting this on a NATO fabric or even rubber strap, and I would definitely get a lot more use out of it. Absolutely gorgeous watch. It is one of my favorites to look at, really because it has the most color of any of my watches. If you're not familiar with GMT watches, GMT stands for Greenwich Mean Time, which is the time at the prime meridian and serves as the reference time for most of the world. Well, either GMT or UTC, with UTC being slightly more accurate. But either way, these GMT watches originated around 1950 with the Rolex GMT Master, which had a very similar blue and burgundy or blue and red Pepsi colored bezel. And it was designed for frequent travelers and pilots in sort of that heyday of air travel when it was a lot more luxurious than today's cattle car type of style. And the idea was you'd be able to quickly tell your local time wherever you were at and know the time of what's called a reference time zone or your home time zone if you were traveling. Conversely, it could be really useful for people in business who do business in a separate time zone, so they have their local time set, and then the time zone of, let's say, Beijing or whoever they might be doing business with. So you're not having to do those mental gymnastics of figuring out the time zone of the person you're going to potentially contact. When I picked this watch up back at the end of 2022, I was traveling quite a bit for work. So I used the justification of going back and forth between home here in the Pacific Northwest and the East Coast, every other month as a reason to pick up a watch with a GMT function. In reality, it's pretty easy to add or subtract 3 hours to whatever time zone you're in. So there's absolutely no need for it, but it was cool to have. Where this does become useful is anybody traveling more time zones than that, right? 12 or 15 hours. It becomes very helpful to quickly reference the bezel and know what time it is somewhere else. Of course, you can do that math. It's just cool. Most of the negative reviews around the Black Bay GMT refer to its thickness, and at 14.6 millimeters thick, it's pretty chunky for a mechanical watch. Tudor's got to have a case this thick to allow for the extra complication of that GMT hand. In their newer Black Bay 58 GMT, I believe the watch is a little bit thinner. They've been able to engineer it slightly differently, but I don't really mind the thickness of this watch. With that being said, I rarely wear dress shirts with narrow or tight cuffs around the wrist. If I did, this probably wouldn't be the watch that I reach for, just because it would get super annoying to have it catch or to have to pull that cuff over constantly. I'm usually in a polo or a t-shirt. Jackets or long sleeves that I wear have elastic cuffs on them, so it's really not an issue to slip it over the top of that. To round out the specs on this watch, it is a 41 millimeter polished stainless steel case. No crown guards on the side of this guy, but you do get a screw down crown that imparts 200 meters of water resistance. The crown has Tudor's gorgeous rose emblem on it compared to my Pelagos and Pelagos FXD. They get the shield symbol. You've got a matte black dial and a matte bidirectional bezel It's anodized aluminum with blue on the top half and burgundy on the bottom half. It gives it that Pepsi look. Absolutely beautiful combination. I love the color contrast of the blue and red on top looking down onto the black dial. Personally, I like this more than the opaline dial, but that's totally a matter of personal preference. To each their own. Both are gorgeous, can't go wrong with them. The dial has a date window at 3 o'clock in place of the indice, very similar to the other watches in the Black Bay line, the Pelagos in particular. No Cyclops window on the dome sapphire crystal, so it has a very clean look when you're looking at it. I actually like that it helps preserve some of the symmetry that a no-date watch tends to have. Rolex's Cyclops window is very prominent, and while it's really useful, I think it does distract a little bit from the beauty of the dial itself. So other GMT watches on the market that you could compare this to would obviously be Tudor's white dial option, the new Black Bay 58 GMT, and then you get into the Rolex GMT Master 2. You've got the Black Bay Pro and the Rolex Explorer 2. All of those have GMT functions. I think the Tudors, in terms of their price point, represent tremendous value, if you can call it that. I mean, value at $3,000 or $5,000, it's still expensive when you can buy a $12 watch at Walmart, probably. But you know, if you're in the watch game, if you enjoy mechanical watches and you appreciate the engineering and precision that it takes to create a watch as accurate as this without any batteries or computer chips, I still think that it represents tremendous value. And when compared to the prices that the Rolex Explorer and the GMT Master 2 command, and the availability of these Tudor GMTs, I think they're excellent choices. Now that we've got all the specs out of the way, where does this watch actually fit in my collection? To be honest, this is the least worn watch of all of my mechanical watches. A lot of that has to do with this leather band, so I'm going to change it and see how that affects my selection in the morning. I do love the look of it, but I also love the look of the more understated toolish watches like my Pelagos FXD. This would be a toss-up between this and the Submariner on a dressy occasion. If I'm wearing a suit, I'm probably going to go with the Submariner because it is thinner, it's easier to get long sleeve dress shirt over. If I'm able to wear a polo and a sport coat, probably going to choose this. I think that the leather band has a really classy look to it, especially in the summer with short sleeves. I really like that look. It really is a beautiful watch to look at, and although still in the dive watch category, adds a little bit of diversity to my collection. Since this watch has 22mm lugs, it'll be very easy to replace the strap and play around with different options and see if it increases the amount of time that it spends on the wrist. If it doesn't, I think of all the watches I've collected so far, this would be the most likely to be sold at some point in lieu of a GMT Master 2 or maybe a Rolex Explorer 2. I might end up running into the same issues with those where I choose not to wear them, instead defaulting to my true divers, mainly the Pelagos FXD and the Pelagos. But I think that's what happens as you collect watches, as you wear things, whether it's watches or backpacks or, I don't know, running shoes, whatever it might be, you start to learn your preference and what you tend to lean towards for certain activities. And at this time in my life, there's just not a ton of applications where a leather strap and a shinier polished watch fit in for me. That could change, right? You never know what's around the corner. So with that, it's a beautiful watch. I think a lot of people, this could be a perfect everyday mainstay watch for them. All you travelers out there, or just people who are interested in the complication that this offers, it's a fantastic option. Anyways, those are my thoughts. That's how I wear it. Check back for another video in the future on who knows what. All right, thanks.